So there we go, Heather.
Perfect. Welcome, everyone. Happy New Year. As you'll see, as you start coming in, I'm going to use Zoom terminology. You'll come in as attendees, and we'll quickly promote you to panelist. So feel free to share. Hi, Glenn. Hi, Nalima. Please feel free to share your screen as you feel, your image and your video as you feel appropriate. But we have a great next hour and a half planned for all of us, and I'm so excited that you'll be joining us today. Hi, Chantaline. Hi, Tom. Welcome. As you come in, we are quickly promoting, using Zoom terminology. Hi, Tom. Promoting you from attendee to panelist. And this way we'll start to invite all of you in. We'll start to share our screen. We have a great 90 minutes planned. Hi, Stephen Lovenick. Good morning, Rebecca. Hi, Bob. Please feel free, as you feel comfortable, share your screen or stay incognito. Hi, Stephen.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Phil. Welcome.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. We're going to begin momentarily. Everyone's joining in. It's one of my favorite times where we start to see individuals coming in from all over.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, Nalima.
Oh, Nalima.
Hello.
Welcome.
Great to see everyone.
Hi, Nalima.
It is so wonderful to be in your presence. And we have an amazing 90 minutes. Morning, Carolyn.
Morning,
beautiful
everyone.
90 minutes planned with everyone. Good morning. So as you start coming in, settle in. Know that we're kind of promoting you with Zoom terminology. And I'm almost done saying it for those of you that have been with us since the beginning, promoting you from attendees to panelists, but it allows us all to be in the same space together, to share our videos as we feel comfortable, and for you to participate. This is really a beautiful collaboration call as well, and we'll open it up to hear from all of you as well. But we have the next 90 minutes together planned out, the amazing 90 minutes with a report from Ketan Patel from the Future Capital Working Group, as well as Julene and Patrik to share with us a little bit about the good work they're doing in the world here. So let's give it a few more moments as everyone comes in. Good morning, Tom, from Colorado. Morning. I can say morning because I know exactly where you are. This is great. Welcome, Gil.
I'm sure everybody is a Zoom expert at this point, but when you have participants, you can use the arrows back and forth to see if you're in participant view or speaker view, back and forth to see all the lovely faces from all over the world.
Perfect. And we'll give it a few more minutes as everyone begins to join. Feel free to, put your questions if you have some already entering in, or comments. Feel free to use the chat as well. And we'll begin momentarily.
And as everybody jumps in on this, some of you have been here from the beginning, some are founding members, some are brand new. I just want to let everybody know this is something that we've got some presentations of people speaking, but the nature of this is to make sure that it's all collaborative. So we want to hear your voices as we go through this, and we'll call on those as we go. So welcome to the community of Future Capital. And hello, Rodolfo. Always nice to see your smiling face across the sea.
Likewise, Lawrence, likewise. Greetings for the New Year's to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning, Richard. Good afternoon, Richard.
Hi, Frank.
Fantastic. Wonderful. So like Lauren said, for those of you that have joined us before, good morning, Genevieve and Joyce, good morning. Wow, what a nice, beautiful treat. For those of you that have joined before, we gather on a monthly basis, the second Wednesday of every month. And I love to see our community expand. This is the first one for this year. For those of you that are brand new, welcome. We'll be together for the next 90 minutes and have some great updates and presentations today. And look forward to some time on the back end as well from hearing from all of you. So you've been promoted. I'm going to use Zoom terminology here for the last time. You've been promoted from attendee to panelist, and it's really an opportunity for us to come together as a community. So please feel free to share your screen or stay incognito as you see fit. But I am excited to dive right in. So for the next 90 minutes, like I said, we have a beautiful okay, Lawrence, I thought that was you talking, but I don't think it is. So for the next 90 minutes, like I said, we're going to have an update, a presentation from Ketan, Patel joining us. We also have Julene and Patrik joining us to share some of their work, good work they're doing in the world. But let's dive right in. I have the honor and pleasure of introducing Lawrence Ford. For those of you that don't know Lawrence Ford, Lawrence is the founder and chairman of Future Capital and author of The Secret of the Seasons, and the CEO and founder of Conscious Capital Wealth Management, where he is leading the transformation of the financial services industry for good. He is a fellow of the World Academy of Art and Science and a member of Nexus Global. Lawrence has dedicated much of his life to being a bridge between the modern world of business and the ancient world of wisdom, which is why Lawrence was dubbed the Shaman of Wall Street by the Washington Post. Lawrence?
Thank you, Heather. Enough of that. Hello, everybody. I appreciate it, Heather, for convening everybody and holding everything together. And most importantly, it's all of you. And we're so happy that all of you have joined us and all of our membership at Future Capital and our friends. And so I just want to quickly ground what we're doing here and then get out of the way so we can get the important people speaking this morning. So Future Capital resides in this place between this nexus of consciousness and capital. Two things typically we would not put in the same sentence. In fact, the people in the consciousness world typically are viewed by the people in the capital world as this ooey gooey kind of new agey, what the heck is that stuff? And then on the on the consciousness world, this often looks at the capital world as just capitalists and they don't get anything. And the point here that we're doing with this mission is that when we really wind that down and get out of our own way, we realize that the two most powerful tools that our species possess is our consciousness, which is everything that is manifested from thought into action, and this thing called capital that we've created, which is man's most externally powerful tool. And I think for most of us on this call, we realize that as a species, we are not necessarily on the right trajectory, and that if we are to adjust our trajectory in a way that is quick enough to help save these Homo sapiens, and also that has sustainability, that we really need to put those two things into the same room together and get things done. So that's really what we're here for. When we gather these on a monthly basis, it is very simple, which is the essence of Future Capital, is to really be this foundation, this platform where I talk about sometimes about as a garden where people can come in and seed the work they're doing with us and share that work within the nexus of consciousness and capital. And that's what's going to happen today. And there's three ways that happens. One is essentially when you come in and you're just doing this work and you're sharing, like two of our participants are today, that individually you might just get inspired and say, holy cow, wow, I've learned something from that, or it really fires me up for the work that I'm doing. I'm not alone in this world with what I'm doing. And that's great, individually being inspired. The second one is to a bilateral connection, meaning, for instance, with Julene or Patrik today, you might say, my goodness, I'm doing that work too. And you want to reach out to them individually to be able to see how you guys can collaborate. The third way is when things take root in our garden, so to speak, with this image, and they become a working group, an actual working group, where we start to water it more and feed it more, which is represented by our first official working group with Ketan this morning, who'll be talking about what that has become and what's happened with that extraordinary work that he has done with his team. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ketan. And Ketan, bear with me for a minute because I'm going to be formal for a minute because I really need to with the introduction of you and the magnificent work that you do in the world. And he's the founder and CEO of Greater Pacific Capital, where he's responsible for overall firm strategy and leads the firm research and ideas team and heads the firm's investment committee. Prior to founding Greater Pacific in 2005, Mr. Patel was managing director in the investment banking division at Goldman Sachs, where he founded the firm's strategic group. Formerly, Mr. Patel was a partner at KPMG, where he was the member of the board of directors of the firm's European strategy team. Ketan leads, as I was just saying, the first future capital working group, Force for Good project, in support of the UN Secretary General strategy and roadmap for financing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Off to you, my good friend, Ketan.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, by the way.
Oh,
Work and your team, what you have done, it's absolutely.
I would say. I'd say thank you for the team. I mean, so I'm going to do a brief personal introduction, an introduction to this project and the team. Personal background would be I'm Indian, born in India. I'm British. I grew up in the UK and I've worked internationally. I would say that this project is such an interesting project for me because you had to do something at some point that was a piece of work that made you change your mind about what you really understood about the world and how it works. And you get lots of those opportunities in life and sometimes you walk by them. And this one came to me accidentally in some ways. And it came to me because I had met Julene Carpentier, who works at the United Nations and had worked extremely in a dedicated, committed fashion for many years on the SDGs. And Julene said to me, there's an event happening in New York that we're hosting with Will Kennedy, one of her colleagues in the UN. And it's on the future of capital itself. And you've been working on in the capital field and at quite a senior level. And you know, if you could take out 2.5 days, I would put your name forward. And based on my friendship with Julene and my understanding of her and her credibility in this field, I said yes. And then I found myself speaking to Lawrence, who I didn't know at all. And I turned up to this event and I met 40 or 50, I think there were 50 people there in the end, who were some of those wonderful people I've ever met. I mean, when I describe it, I think I would say a small proportion of those people would look to me from where I'd worked before as mainstream professional finance or industrial type people. A third of them looked to me like they dedicated their lives to saving the world and the planet. And another third of those looked like they had spent time dedicated to improving themselves and had gone in the deep journey inside to find what the answers to everything. And all these groups were merging in some way at this event, and no one sat in one category of those three anyway. So it was a real eye-opener. It was like a coming out party for those people that believed in consciousness and wanted the world to actually have the money to save itself. So very interesting for me to be there and meet all these great people. It was a very intense time, but something productive had to come out of it. And there was a catalyst on the morning of the third day. And I remember having a conversation with Lawrence saying, how are you going to bring all this together so that we end up with some great ideas to follow up? And if you don't, you know, are you sure you're willing to face the idea that you galvanized all these people, we didn't get enough? And Lawrence, true to form, as I discovered, was very much up for stepping up to galvanize the whole team. And so I had to call people out, and we all came together and a whole series of ideas came out. I was delighted to lead the first project that had a working group like this that really got galvanized to see if they could deliver an outcome. And it's beholden me to describe a little bit of what that is. And I'll set the scene as follows. Firstly, the mission was, can capital be a force for good in the world? So, and can we kick off a movement effectively that changes the system of capitalism itself what steps can we take that really make that happen? And that's quite a big agenda, as you can imagine. An agenda too big to get done, certainly within the timescales we have, and certainly with the people that were involved necessarily. So, but I've got to admit, I thought it was something worth trying, and I was delighted there were other great people who were at that event who joined and said, of course, we should do this. Our UN hosts, Julene and Will, stayed with us the whole way through and provided support and guidance. And I think that was very important because it never let us off the idea that the mission was to do something that would be world-changing if we could do it, and system-changing for the world. So I was happy to lead that project, but the steering group of that was fantastic. We had a group of people who have experience, of course, in the environment, in managing change, in being in business too, in being in finance too, and quite a dynamic, interested, committed group who ducked nothing of the issues and really were vocal putting those on the table. But Catherine Collins, Frank Dixon, Lawrence was part of that group too, Gil Friend, Stephen Lovink, Terry Mulner, and Mark Sloss. And so that was the group that had to really effectively steer this and get it all the way through. And I was delighted that my firm put effort into really helping to gather the data, do the analysis, write the report, help us do the outreach and so on. So all part of the important work of really delivering that. I'm going to cut straight to saying what we managed to get to, because you've heard versions of this story, and I think it's more important now that we've crossed the important milestone. The objective is never ending, of course, to change the system, but we had an important milestone to meet. At this milestone, here's what we've done. We have galvanized enough data to look at 63 of the world's leading financial institutions. And these cross a few sectors. So we have asset managers, we have insurers, and we have banks. And the asset managers include sovereign wealth funds and others too. So the very large institutions like Bank of America, BlackRock, the kind of mega hedge fund, the biggest in the world, Bridgewater, CDPQ, the Canadian pension fund, Citigroup, Credit Suisse, Fidelity, First Abu Dhabi Bank, GIC Singapore, Goldman Sachs, Great West, Lifeco, HDFC from India, HSBC Bank, Investec Bank, Japan Post, JP Morgan Chase, Liberty Mutual, Lloyd's Banking Group, Morgan Stanley, 91, which is an asset manager from South Africa, Nomura and Nordea from the Nordic region, of course, Northern Trust, OMA's the Canadian pension fund, Putnam, Schroders, State Street, SEB, big Scandinavian bank, UBS and Wellington. These were the 30 amongst the 60 that took what we call an active participant role. And so here's what it really took from our part. Number one, you have to figure out whose data do you need? And we needed the biggest financial institutions represented across the world, across all the important asset classes. The second task was to figure out which of the 60 might be the actors who not just allow us to use their public information, which we can anyway, of course, but will allow us to get a real feel for that information and share that information with us, their insights, and give us some private information on the initiatives that they're undertaking. And this is quite a huge task to go out to 30. It did take us quite a few months to figure out whether we would have, what type of UN sponsorship we would have, or support, or just guidance and so on. And then from there to actually begin the outreach. And it was sometime during the summer that we began the outreach. And then it was sometime in the autumn that we began the process of actually giving them data, collecting their data more, analyzing it. And in November and December, we thought we had enough data to start to produce a really thorough analysis and produce the report. The conclusions are quite interesting. Part one of our mission was to see if there was a common ground emerging between the industry, such that you can see now what it takes to be an industry leader. And is that something that is an industry leader that is a force for good? And we define force for good as three things. It's an organization that takes the environment, social, and governance very seriously, all the way from policy to practices. Number two, that they take sustainable impact seriously and they have real initiatives and financial products that will make a sustainable impact in the world. And number three, whether they take stakeholders broader than shareholders as their customers, and they engage with those and they make sure that they serve the broader set of stakeholders, from employees all the way out into the communities and into the world. And what we found was the common ground is enormous. 78% of the financial institutions that we looked at out of the 63 have embraced ESG integrated into their businesses, fully integrated into their business, into the management systems, capturing data on it and enforcing that. And that was huge. We weren't sure how big that number really would be in percentage terms amongst this leadership group. ESG factors are now embedded in the decision-making of these 63. And they have at least $12.5 trillion of assets that are integrated with these ESG considerations. So I mean, that's a big number. And that was very significant for us to discover in this process. Number three, the finance industry leaders have adopted a focus on climate change and driving the energy transition. They have policies that are excluding all sorts of carbon-related emissions businesses. Some of them exclude them 100%. Some have a threshold where anything above $10,000 or $20,000 can't be financed. And so effectively, they're making decisions that say they will refuse to finance things that emit and harm the environment. That number's enormous. So these 63 financial institutions alone account for $240 billion of investments. And so if they make that decision, that's approximately 2/3 of the world's total annual investments, right, in renewables is made by just this small group. Across the world, the industry, 100% of them are engaged with a broader set of stakeholders, employees, communities, and so on. They clearly have further to go, but they've already embraced stakeholders as the concept that they think is the most important. They place the highest priority on human rights, rights of the individual, on diversity, and so on. And so 78% of them have employee diversity and outreach programs, 73% have employee well-being programs and mindfulness, mental health programs that are quite radical in some cases. Again, much further to go because, you know, every time I'm giving you a number, there's a counterside that makes it 100% that is still left to do. And despite the history of being a very male-dominated industry in finance, what we found was half of these now, half of the employees at the senior level now are women, and a third of the board is now represented by women. Again, as I said, that means there's still far to go, right? But it shows you the sort of progress the industry is actually making. 30 of these that played an active role shared with us what they're doing to break the boundaries. So there's a big common ground. And what we found was that a growing body of this group feel confident to say our role is not just to be financed, but to be a leader in the world. And so they're willing to launch, for example, one of them has $30 billion launched into a program to promote Black equity in America. One of them has $100 billion dedicated to launching a development bank that will finance development in the world. Another one has created a whole division, one of its most important divisions out of 4 divisions, to promote affordable housing. And it goes on and on like that. So what we started to see was this boldness coming into their agenda. And it's very profitable to do so, is what we found. So we analyzed this group of 60, benchmarked them to the rest of the industry, and then benchmarked them to each other. What we found was the more good you do, the more money you make. Those that were the most aggressive, the most bold, the most courageous at doing things that weren't about satisfying just their shareholders, but really doing good in the world, made overwhelmingly the most amount of money for their shareholders and for their people, paid the best bonuses, had the best employee practices. And that was such a delight because, you know, if we can establish a virtuous circle between making money and doing good, I think we've achieved the mission. And I want to stop there because I should give some time to some of the others to speak up who were involved in the steering group and in supporting this initiative. I know Chantaline, you're on too, and without yours and Will's support, and I know how active you were personally making sure that we stayed on mission and we got the support. So please, anyone else, please speak up. Chantaline.
Yeah, thank you, Ketan. And yes, Chantaline and Will Kennedy have been extraordinary. There are extraordinary people in the world, and then there are extraordinary people in the world. And I'm going to embarrass you now, Chantaline, probably, but just the amount of work that some people do in large organizations for good, relentlessly every single day behind the curtain, and don't get the recognition. Introducing Chantaline Carpenter and William Kennedy from the UN. I'm telling you, they are angels, and we really appreciate all of your support. Yeah, amazing work.
Well, thank you guys, but honestly, all the reward goes to Ketan and his team. They did all the work. We just kind of were there to review draft and make them align with the, in the context and language of the UN to make sure that we go forward. So honestly, all the credit goes back, and I'm paid to do this job. I'm passionate about it. I think it's clear, but, and it's not a job, it's a passion. And we will move forward. And all I want to say is 2021 in my book is a year of opportunities. All the doors are open, all the windows are open. This is the time for change. So let's all work together. So thank you, Ketan, for all the work, and Lawrence and everybody else on that group. Over to you.
Absolutely. That's such wise words. And when we can move to a place of cynicism or us, them, and oh gosh, look at how bad this this year has started. Please eliminate that from your vocabulary and your psyche. This, as Chantaline said, this is the greatest opportunity for us to be able to move the needle in the world. And I'm extremely excited about 2021, and I hope you are all as well. Ketan, why don't we've got a few minutes left. We've actually got almost 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Let's have a conversation between you and your team. And I'm gonna call you on the spot now for a moment. I did put a link in so everybody can get to see the report and all the information there in the chat. So everybody can go there. But let's have a little dialogue, or
let me kick it off. Yeah, let me kick that off too.
Perfect.
So look, is it all done? Of course not. Is it great that there is a big common ground? Of course there is. How do we get systemic change done? Right. I mean, that was one of the agenda items that we knew we had to move towards. And our strategy, which I would say, and I'm going to ask, is Terry Molnar on? Did Terry actually manage to join?
I don't see him on here.
I wanted Terry and Frank and Gil to say something on that topic, because we began the journey, but of course the systemic change, this is something that we want to spur, and to spur that systemic change, we hope the industry of tens of thousands out there who are doing far less than the 60 we looked at will be inspired to, if nothing else by personal greed, to see that if you want to make more money, you have to do good on the front.
Ketan, let me jump in real quickly, so I have to dive out for a board meeting in about 3 minutes.
Yeah.
But first of all, thank you for stewarding this effort. It's a remarkable piece of work. 2 comments. The benchmarking approach that we took is, in my experience as an advisor to the world's leading companies, is one of the most powerful tools we have, because we find very often that companies think they're doing a great job. And it's a self-referential assessment. And as soon as they can compare themselves dispassionately against their peers on similar challenges and see where, in fact, in detail, where they are strong and where they are weak, it's one of the most effective motivators for action that we've seen. And I think we're already seeing that kind of response, Ketan, from the companies that you and your team have been in dialogue with. So that's number 1. Number 2, what we haven't done in this report, but which I spoke about in the last Future Capital monthly meeting last month, is the structural challenges of modern capitalism. It's clear that capitalism has been a massive leverage for change and for uplifting billions of people from poverty around the world. And yet it's got structural, let's call them defects or barriers if you will, to accomplishing the mission that Ketan was describing. So that's not in the report, it's in our conversations. There's other work and writing being done about that. And I think that's an important part of the work. Frank, I'm gonna hand it off to you, but Frank and Terry Molnar, who's not here, and Jed Emerson, distilled on that third morning that Ketan was talking about the mission of systems change for the common good. Not just systems change for the sake of not clear what, not just common good as a nice happy face to put on the story, but linking those two into the challenge of how do we engage people in changing the system, the world economic system for the common good. And this is an enormous beachhead that this team has opened here. I'm sorry I have to jump. Thank you everybody so much for this work and for being able to participate in it with you.
Thanks, Gil. And thanks, Ketan. Can I jump in?
Yeah, please, Frank.
Well, I agree with you. I loved the meeting at the UN a year and a half ago. There was a lot of great people and a lot of good feeling about helping the world. And the project that we started, led by you, I think has done amazing work. It's a testament, I think, to your mastery of the financial sector that you've been able to bring in all those financial institutions and get them to work with us. So it's quite an accomplishment, just the fact that we brought them in. And the part that was most appealing to me, as Gil mentioned, was going beyond ESG. I was in that research field long ago in the 2000s, and we were doing lots of good work, but I saw then that it's not enough. The problem isn't the companies, it's the systems that control their behavior. And if we don't change them, there's no way companies can stop harming the environment and society under current systems. So that was the contribution that I made to the team. Our first step, showing benchmarking them on ESG, is fantastic. Compliment them for the good work that they're doing, but then possibly if we can help them to go beyond that and see how can we actually drive system change. It's the most complex challenge facing humanity. Work is needed in many areas, but the key question is, what can the financial sector do to change economic, political, and other systems? And our strongest leverage point for that is investing. So we can use ESG right now, drives companies to get involved in sustainability. We can expand ESG and encourage them to get involved in changing systems. So I'm hoping that that's where this project goes, and we've got a lot of potential if we do that. And it's really an honor to be a part of it. And again, you've done a masterful job. We obviously, as Chantaline said, we wouldn't be where we are if not for you, Ketan. So thank you.
It's too nice. Stephen and Mark too, please. And Catherine, is Catherine on? If she is, it'd be great to hear, because Putnam participated and she's from Putnam. And she got her organization to actually be one of the active participants, which was great. Stephen or Mark, any comments? Otherwise, I will draw it together after that and hand back to you, Lawrence.
Well, first of all, I think we had a wonderful time since we met in September and beyond in many meetings together with a group of people that were very open-minded and spirited to tackle with the subject at hand. And I think with the report, as it has come together, it's really teeing things up to push things in a force for good direction. There's a lot of work that needs to be done still, but it sets up a dynamic that can be built up.
And to have whole person conversations, and I personally miss that horribly, and I'm really happy to be able to have this limited time with you guys today.
There's a cross.
Seriously difficult times we don't need to rehash or discuss, although I know we would all like to be sitting down together and have an opportunity to.
Okay, sorry about that, Stephen.
Yeah.
I was on the search, on the hunt for that. Go ahead, continue. My apologies.
Yeah. Anyway, so I think it sets up a very positive dynamic. Personally, I've been very interested in all the discussions around systems change investing, which is really for me a frontier of sorts where there's a blind spot of sorts in the financial system that we really need to address. I just came from an online webinar where they released the little book of investing in nature, and which was backed by the French government and many other organizations, which very much focused on nature and biodiversity. And I think we always have to keep in mind that the profits we make and the results we achieve are, you know, a gift from nature, and that we need to reciprocate that. And if you look at how much we're actually investing in nature, we have a long way to go. But it's been wonderful to work together with everybody on the team. And thank you so much, Ketan, for pulling us all together, and for the support from Chantal and Will. Great.
It was a pleasure. Lawrence, I guess we're in the last 2 minutes, right? Or 1 minute even. Do you want me to just pull it together and hand it back to you? So
perfect. Anything left that you want to add? Because we're right on.
So the pulling together is if you look at www.forcegood.org, you can access the report and download it. If you have any difficulties, just write into any of us, but Heather will be delighted, I'm sure, to point you in the right direction too, and as will Lawrence and as will I. One of the three of us will take care of you to make sure that works. But the report is there. It's worth a good read because it does give you almost a manual for what that common ground is and what the major tram lines of where finance is going are. And so we're very hopeful we can continue to push that. Thank you very much. It was what a pleasure to work with this group. Thank you.
Thank you, Ketan. And so what you have just seen is a wonderful representation of a magnificent working group of beautiful people coming together and taking some action, getting a significant project underway, which I think Ketan has some serious future to it. And as Gil was saying, I think the way it benchmarks and competes is genius, and how you put that together. So thank you very much for all that work and the entire group. And I also want to, before I hand it off, I want to just hit home again. What we do here is really individually and bilaterally and collectively, we come together in action. And there's some questions about that sometimes. And I just want to make that comment that future capital is about action. There's a lot of organizations that do wonderful talking and thinking, and that's very important as well. But this organization is about seeding action in the world, real definable action that goes out into the world to make change. And the second part of that is at a systemic level, at a systems-based level. We're not interested in curing symptoms. We're about getting to the core and doing it in a rapid way. So I just wanted to add that part, and I will hand this off to, I'm going to cheat here and look, I think it is Steve. Take it away with Julene.
Thank you, Lawrence. Congratulations, Ketan, Chantaline, everybody. I am absolutely thrilled that the 30 years that I spent kind of trudging through the mud, or my metaphor is, pushing the wheelbarrow full of water uphill, with this radical notion, or believing this radical notion that investors could in fact be a force for good, and that people could make money being good in the world, and that it's now essentially being proven. And I am also honored to be part of the leadership team of Future Capital, and to be a part of the process of creating the connections at this nexus of consciousness and capital, and recognizing that there's lots of tentacles, if you will, that kind of spread from this nexus out into the world. And there's different people working on parts of healing that connective tissue between consciousness and capital. And I am thrilled this morning to introduce you to Julene Siddique, who I met through Mila Popovich, who is one of the 50 founding members of Future Capital, back in the spring of 2020. And Lawrence and I were invited to speak on a panel with her, and you know, we just so impressive and hit it off. Julene is a transdisciplinary scientist, artist, musician, and entrepreneur. She's dedicated to social impact and has worked extensively on the intersections between the arts, health, education, and culture. Julene created the socio-systematic framework, which combines system sciences and social sciences to design innovations which can bring about systems change. She's also the founder and CEO of Nada Brahma, which is a startup really, and I'm sure she'll tell us more about this, that's working at the, again, another nexus, the nexus of art and science and music and the brain. And so Julene, you know, you've got such a cool and unique and perspective here. I'm so thrilled to introduce you to our future capital community.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve, for that lovely introduction. And thank you, Lawrence and Heather, for having me. Actually, there's a number of synergies that came up because the socio-systemic framework I'm working on at the World Academy is about systems change, key aspects of systems change. One of the things that you pointed out, you know, visibility, having new benchmarks, new data to work on. Yeah, so that's something actually that I've just been talking about with Frank Dixon. So that was, I didn't expect Frank to be here. So lots of good synergies going on. The other synergy that I'm just bringing up is what we were working on with UN Geneva and the World Academy was arts as the missing piece to really achieving the SDGs. So those were two amazing synergies that I just wanted to highlight. So I think what I want to talk about is, for me, bringing those two things into practice, right? So I think it's about having as many demonstratable examples and case studies of effective systems change. I was trained as a classical composer. I also did a second master's degree, interdisciplinary on music in the brain and social aspects of music. And it was really interesting for me to go between the worlds of the music industry and then into these laboratories, you know, working on the science of music. And I noticed in the music industry, they're basically going on, you know, what sold before? Who was the artist that sold before? Okay, let's make one more like that. Okay, because that's the data that they have, that's the working method that they're used to. Meanwhile, I'm going into circles with anthropologists showing how music affects social organization, affects social behavior, affects social environments, and scientists working on how music affects the brain, in fact, even changes your brain's structure. And I'm going, this is not the same conversation, you know, and what I came up with was an interdisciplinary framework for my company to unlock the benefits of music, to create a benefit-based industry model for the music industry that can be more insightful and I believe more profitable. So the fact that you said that you can do better by doing good, that's what my research is pointing to. So I'm very happy that that's been reinforced by this group. Do better by doing good, but also make a really measurable impact in our global health challenges, because in fact, there are numerous ways to use music for solving global health challenges, mental health being one of them, and brain health, which is, you know, what we're working on. So I'll tell you a little bit about what we're doing. We call it musical nutrition. We call it musical nutrition because, in fact, we compare it to the food industry, that it was only in the 1990s that the FDA put nutrition labels on food. And before then, no one knew what was in it, you know? I even remember my Italian family thinking the fat on the prosciutto was the white meat. And then you had nutrition. And then after you have nutrition, you get a boom in all sorts of diets. We've got superfoods. We've got an entire industry of nutrition and food. So what we're doing is we're creating musical nutrition, which is essentially metadata on songs, and to say about the psycho-emotional impact of that song, social factors related to it, deep acoustical analysis. We have a very advanced sound technology that we're working on. So we can distribute music according to condition, according to well-being activity, and we can distribute it personalized, personalized to mood, personalized to benefit. This is what we are working on. So essentially benefit-based music distribution, hoping to move into a big data industry where we can give data to labels and publishers saying why people are listening to music. Do you realize there are, for example, 1 million people listening to music with certain qualities in it, so that they can have something new written, or maybe they have something in their back catalog with those qualities in it. So it's really building this benefit-based model for the music industry. We're currently starting an interoperable relationship with psychological therapies. So it also can work by condition and be part of the patient's care and treatment support process. But I think it's a big R&D project at this moment. We've got 2 huge technical workshops coming up this month. So by the end of the month, we will have our full software architecture and MVP launch plan and things like that. So which is why I'm being a little bit vague at the moment, because I've got a big technical workshop to figure out the launch plan and the testing plan. But we're just really excited about transforming the industry, right? Just an example about how through creating, advanced sonic analysis, biotechnology that we use through biomarkers in the voice, creating an interoperable system, a benefit-based model, that we can take something like the music industry, and instead of just, based on commercial data, bring all this other data into it that can transform the entire model, right? So systemic change, so that you can have a music industry that is not just, entertainment, or in fact, kind of discluding areas of music that don't fit into its mold, into have something that is personalized mood-based music, but personalized and curated to your health and potential. And I'll be able to, for multiple conditions in multiple ways, but that's a big conversation. I'll save that for the Q&A if you want to probe me on that. But essentially just showing how you can rewire an industry and rewire a model just by bridging gaps in knowledge, bridging gaps in technology, and bridging gaps in making impact an integral part of the equation. Not just giving to a foundation or charity after you've done your profit, but this is part of the model. This is part of the modus operandi. So turning the music industry into a global healing machine, that's the big idea. So thank you.
Wow, turning the music industry into a global healing machine. Yeah. Is there anything more? You just sent chills up and down my spine. That's an incredible aspiration. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that with us, and you'll get a chance to talk some more as Lawrence facilitates the final part of our program this morning. So thank you, Julene. I'm going to turn this over now to Patty.
Thank you.
So thank you, Julene. That was so interesting, and I'm pretty excited about your whole effort. And to Ketan and Frank and Gil, Stephen, Catherine, Mark, the whole team, and your Chantaline, Will, and the members of Greater Pacific, what an incredible feat Force for Good is. And I shared it with my colleagues at the Asian Development Bank. They were thrilled to receive that report. And I think this is going to go far and wide around the world to make a difference. So thank you so much. Now I have the great privilege and honor to introduce our next speaker, Patrik Summers. And Patrik was also one of the members of our founding event that Ketan described earlier in September 2019, when we launched Future Capital. And Patrik is a systemic facilitator of transformation with over 10 years of international experience as a values-based consultant and executive coach. So Patrik is a pioneer of inner leadership development and personal evolution. His approach begins with identifying values, and purpose and leads to whole system alignment. So prior to consulting, Patrik spent 20 years in education as a teacher, facilitator, and coach, specializing in curriculum, emotional intelligence, behavioral change, personal and spiritual growth, mental health, and bereavement counseling. So what I want to say personally is that Patrik created a space for all of us at that event back in September 2019, which kind of held us in this place of imaginal presence, which he will be talking to you about. And it was this way of bringing together such a diverse group of people, as you are all now getting a sense of in this conversation here. We were a very diverse group of people. And by bringing us together in his beautiful way, we managed to find where we all have common ground and where our expression of our own purpose kind of ignites one another in our differences. So without further ado, I would love to introduce to you Patrik Summers. Patrik, can you unmute?
Okay. Thank you, Patty, for the introduction. So, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I want to start my story with the Transformation of Conscious group that also was one of the groups that came out of the founding group in New York. And we did a very interesting exercise led by Tim Kelly when we were looking at the essence, the group key and the mission message of our group. And the essence that we came up with was, we are the imaginal cells of the new humanity. Now, 25 years ago, long before I knew about imaginal cells, the very first significant caterpillar that came in my life was the children book, The Very Hungry Caterpillar. And that was in Dutch translated with the title, Caterpillar Never Enough. As a bereavement counselor in Belgium, I used the caterpillar and the butterfly as a metaphor that Elisabeth Kubler-Ross used to explain what happens when people die, the transition to what happens after our life here on earth. But when I was in my biggest crisis of life, where I had to go through a double healing process, it's only then that I learned about imaginal cells and the inner process of transition from caterpillar to butterfly. And since then, I must say, the imaginal cells have always been a key source of inspiration. It's only in the last few years that nature has become my teacher and guide. And here are some of the imaginal lessons that nature keeps on teaching me and all of us, if we're open to it. First of all, without imaginal cells, the story of the caterpillar would end with the caterpillar. There is no transition to a new butterfly reality without imaginal cells. And also these imaginal cells, they can't survive the immune system of the caterpillar when they stay just single individual cells. It's only by connecting and clustering to imaginal discs that they can stay alive in a caterpillar environment and that they can allow a transition to happen. But there is more. Connected imaginal cells are patient and trust the process. Because all impatience, frustration, and anger against the caterpillar would destroy the caterpillar before the transition to chrysalis is possible, which means that these imaginal cells would destroy their own butterfly potential. And so it's fascinating to see their imaginal presence within this caterpillar reality. But there is more. Caterpillars don't reproduce. It are the adult female butterflies that lay eggs near or on the plants, and that will be used for the newborn caterpillars. So butterflies, they don't lay eggs for little butterflies. You get new caterpillars. And this brought me to the insight that when we talk about transformation, we say, yeah, it's an irreversible, it goes beyond change, it's irreversible, but as long as the butterfly stays alive. And what you see over time is that, yeah, things seems to go back rather than forwards, and you come in a cycle of continuum of transitions. And I used to believe that everything starts with the beginning and ends with the end. But the more I get into transitions, the more I see that it all starts with an end and it ends with a new beginning. And it's the space between that is so special and so sacred, and that allows the transition to happen. William Bridge talks about the neutral zone, Alan Seal about the liminal space, Bruce Feiler about the messy middle, which makes sense. And so the whole process of transition has become very important in my life and related to imaginal presence. Now you can imagine last year, 2020, has been such a year that nobody could have imagined. And you see a lot of people struggling and organizations struggling because there is at so many levels, it's obvious that systems are broken and don't work anymore. The two things that I want to bring up here to start talking about imaginal presence is, first of all, when there is such a disruptive event and it keeps on going and keeps on going, just a simple update of our system won't work. We need a complete upgrade. And the other thing is that I see when leaders, when people struggle with what happens in an organization, with what happens in the world, it is a reflection and a mirror of the struggle in their inner world. And so the best contribution that we can give to the world is to work on our inner growth and personal evolution. And that's how we expand space to grow for other people and for organizations with optimizing profit and overall impact. And so with that in mind, I want to offer for 21 a new inner operational system, an upgrade to cope with the reality, and that's what I call imaginal presence. And there are 4 elements that I want to look at, 4 elements that I want to activate to focus on the essence of our being. It's about presence, it's about mastery, it's about purpose, and it's about relatedness. Presence means it's about being, focus on attention, intention, coherence, adaptability. With presence, we are looking at the question, where am I? And we embrace what overwhelms and disturbs us with being present. Mastery is about integrating, with a focus on waking and integrating, loving, healing, and owning. With mastery, we look at the question, who am I? Who am I really? And we embrace all the moments of stress, frustration, trigger, and upset with mastery. With purpose, we are looking at leading our life with our reason for being, with focus on inspiration, connection, collaboration. We're looking at the question, why am I? And we embrace the emptiness and the meaninglessness with purpose. And relatedness, it's about bonding and interbeing with the focus on our number 1 relationship with ourselves, and from there with other people, with the golden rule, with community, communication. And we look at the question, why are we? And we embrace separation and loneliness with relatedness. The reason why presence is so important for me is As a child, I never felt at home in my family of origin. I didn't feel seen, I didn't feel heard, I didn't feel understood, I didn't feel loved. And so as a father, I was obsessed by creating a home for my children. And every evening I was checking, have I given each of my children at least one moment that I felt seen, heard, understood, and loved? I had to go through a major crisis in life to realize that I was so obsessed giving a home for my children that I was not part of it, because I was not doing this for them, I was doing it for myself. And so this whole process, and that's done mastery, from victim to mastery, from the frustration of not having enough, not being loved enough, not being good enough. My goodness, for decades I've been an executive member of the Never Enough Club in the world. And it's one of the biggest clubs. And never enough is so exhausting because it is never enough. And the worst of all is people with power and money and with the frustration of not enough and never enough, they are so damaging. And we see it up to today, what's happening in the world with it. So the importance to move from victim to master is crucial for your presence. Because every time when you're frustrated, you are out of presence. And from there, you go down to purpose. Purpose. For many years, my favorite song was Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For, You Too. And I had to master my life to come to the real purpose, the reason for being. And suddenly relationships and connections with other people made sense. When you are a victim, in victim mode, and you feel that you have never enough, you use relationships for yourself. When you are in your mastery, then you serve others with your purpose and you co-create together. And that's beautiful in the booklet of Clay Christensen, who wrote the book, How Will You Measure Your Life? And he says, at the end of your life, it's not about achievements. It's not about numbers of bank accounts. It's not about how many people were on the webinar, 20 or 200. What matters is meaningful relationships. The quality of life that is reflected in how you connect with people in alignment with your purpose, and how this has a positive impact on the world. So the essence of imaginal presence is presence, mastery, purpose, relatedness. And it's easy to come to the core of this, because if you take the first letters of each word, then you get pre and ma from presence and mastery, pu and re from relatedness, purpose, relatedness, and prima pure is, I called it the secret sauce, and somebody understood, you mean the sacred source? And I said, yeah, maybe that's the same. Prima is a Sanskrit word for love, and pure in this case is unconditional love. So if we refocus on the essence of our being, then imaginal presence will help us to drive through life's transitions. And if as leaders, advisors, coaches, we can guide people through transitions, that will create space for systemic change. Absolutely. And the guides are, for me, then guides on the side rather than sages on the stage. And I know that Lawrence loves his action, and I agree. And at the same time, I want to refocus on our being, because for decades I was 24/7 into the old sacred mantra. And many people, I meet many people with the same mantra of top guru Frank Sinatra, where he sings. Julene, I'm not good at singing, but I bring the music in because I want to honor your work too. Frank Sinatra's mantra, where he sings, do, be do, be do, be do. All about doing. And I don't want to change this mantra. I just want to refocus on the essence of our being. And so I want to hear the whisper of be, do be, do be, do be. And let all our doing and action be a manifestation of our being. That's what I call imaginal presence and coming home in the life that we are meant to live and walking each other home. So be it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patrik. Beautiful. So I just want to say one thing. I feel like our three speakers today really embody the essence of Future Capital. With Ketan and Patrik, we're both part of our original founding group, and Ketan representing the capital, the action out in the world, the capital side. Patrik beautifully grounded us in consciousness, in the being aspect, and then Julene, you know, our extension out to the world to invite others to come in and expand our group and expand our horizons and our ideas about what's possible with all of these gifts that we each carry in our being, in our action, in our work, and in our purpose. So I want to thank all three of you and hand it over to Lawrence.
Thank you, Patty. And Patrik, thank you for being you. You are amazing in the world, and we appreciate all you do and be. So listen, now what we do is this part for the last part of the call is where we all just imagine for a moment, because we have to do it with this ridiculous two-dimensional reality we live in today. Hopefully we'll be disappearing in the future. But we all just vision us all coming onto this big cozy couch together for a conversation. And in the middle of the couch, I'm hanging out with Ketan, Julene, and Patrik, but we're all part of the conversation. And the one thing that I want to make explicit here is that for most of you that I know, for the others that I don't, I know that each of you individually are doing extraordinary work in the world as well. And so I welcome you all to this conversation as equals. And this is where we just get to talk and weave a little bit about what we're doing. And I'm going to start with, let's see, what I love, Julene, about what you're doing with music is that it's really, truly, for me, it feels like it's very, you know, when we talk about systems based, right? I mean, when we talk about consciousness, when you bring music into our consciousness and how it changes the way that we react and emote with that, you know, I think there's some really interesting things that can happen in the world of capital around that as well. I don't know what they are yet, but I'd like to start on the couch with that conversation.
Well, no, thank you, Lawrence. I mean, definitely music is humanity's oldest activity. It has music and musical booms and changes and cultural booms have always been associated with evolutionary periods. This is from, you know, anthropological, you know, records. And at the nexus of capital, one of the things that we do in terms of personalizing music to a person's health and potential, we work with a framework called creative response, which is all the core functions of a person. So basically finding a person's baseline, combining music with well-being activities, finding their baseline, you know, because we go up and down every, you know, different days. What's that baseline and how do we raise their baseline? So essentially raising the potential of a person. And as well as working on mental health programs, because actually in the UK, there's 17.5 billion, actually it's gone up since COVID, being lost to sick days directly related to anxiety and depression. So that's why we work on that area. That's just what's being lost in sick days, according to the UK national statistics, but that doesn't even cover what we could be making if we were all working at our optimum potential. And in working with musical enhancements, we can actually alter structure of the brain for the better, for better cognitive fluidity, for better self-coherence, for better awareness, emotional mastery, also many, many things. We create personalized programs for people. That's the point. But I think there is a lot that can be done because Essentially what you're talking about with ESG, this is a lifestyle change. This is a mindset change. The work I did with the World Academy was outlining all of the arts-based strategies and music-based strategies for mindset shifts, right? How do we cultivate this new culture? But more than cultivate it, how do we embody it? Because there's some deep inner shifts that take place with that. So for things that what Frank Dixon is talking about in systems change, what Ketan is doing in ESG, we can make that a real way of life, but also programs that literally we are raising the potential of people measurably. So I think that's the link. That's what comes to mind as the link.
Beautiful. I would like to solicit someone out in our audience of attendees. Just feel free. We always trust. Just unmute and jump in and ask a question or tell us what you're doing. Let's just continue this big couch conversation.
Hello, I'm Marina in London.
Hi.
Hi, Julene. I was really inspired by what you're sharing. And I just want to take us back to that first there was silence before there was sound. So just as the vibration of the music is so important, but so is the silence, the inner silence.
Absolutely.
The inner silence. And I love what you're talking about, strategies, organizations, etc. I meditate, and I know that many of us here meditate. And I do singing. Many of us sing. I do chanting, mantras, whatever you call them, okay? Because each sound has a vibration. Each emotion has a vibration.
Yeah.
So the fact is, not to take anything away from what you're saying, but just building on it, is enabling people to really start small, just within themselves, in their own little room or in their own little home with their families, which is this awareness is how often do I go inside myself and I'm silent, because that silence has a beautiful resonance. We can hear it if we just put our hands on our head, we can hear the sound of the sea, okay? And the other thing is that be aware of our emotions, because the emotions have a resonance, and then just whatever sounds, because I do Om and I do Om Namah Shivaya and do so many different things, but whatever calms you down, whatever calms you down, and Patrik, I can see you smiling, I'm speaking your language, whatever calms us down. So whether it's the silence, whether it's the chanting, whether it's the music, whether it's the dancing, whether it's just focusing even on our emotions, it all goes hand in hand, what you're saying. And why are we feeling the way that we are? Because if we look around the world, around us, the vibrations of the emotions is fear, greed, stress, anxiety, worry. No matter how much work we do on our inner selves, the external environment will affect us. So we can start small. And then even if you could just do these music sessions in organizations or chanting sessions, or these energy vibrations, they have different vibrations, just have that, like before starting work, during lunch. Of course, we don't, not in organizations at the moment, but just make it a practice at home. I do not start anything in my day until I have spent a good 2 hours with myself, just looking after myself. Yeah, and I'm sure many of us have a practice like that. So I just wanted to say, I acknowledge what you're doing. It's wonderful. And we can make it even simpler and even more basic for people if they think this is hogwash, because it's not hogwash. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your sharing. Yeah,
Thank you, Marina.
lifestyle integration is definitely very important.
I'd like to say a few words. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
So I'm Deborah Diamond. I'm an intuitive. I'm a psychic medium, actually, but I used to be a money manager. So I know it sounds peculiar. I was actually the first woman hedge fund manager on Wall Street. I'm also an author. I do a lot of speaking. I used to be a commentator on CNBC. But anyway, that's a little bit about my background. But I work with a lot of people who have had spiritually transformative experiences. Music, as some of you have pointed out, music is a high vibration experience. It can bring us a feeling similar to meditation. And that is why people work with singing bowls, with chanting, with bells, with chanting the word Om. All of these things bring us to a higher vibrational state. Now, in terms of ESG, there are many institutions who are working with this kind of modality. Nursing homes are using this with their patients, particularly their dementia patients, because they've realized that these dementia patients may not be fully cognitive, but when you introduce music to them, they have breakthroughs. So it's being used, it's being institutionally used in nursing homes. It's being used in other social institutions and in training programs at places like the New York Open Center, Kripalu, lots of these kinds of organizations that kind of specialize in bringing spiritual experiences, yoga, this sort of thing to folks. And of course, on a local level, there are lots of people who do this. I mean, there are people who provide, who teach yoga and yoga centers and whatnot, and they all have this as part of their programs these days. They all use, I see at all these centers, they're all using Tibetan bowls or singing bowls or bells, or any of these things are chanting along with their yoga, or just as a separate offering. So it's already working its way into our society. It's been, I would say in the last couple of years, it's really accelerated. So I think this idea that music is as a high vibrational experience, along with, there are so many things that are high vibrational, but that's one, that it has a place, and it's very socially acceptable. It's not like saying, you have to be a shaman and go to the top of a hill and, or mountain and meditate and fast for a week. I mean, that might be a little out there for some people, but talking about music is something that everybody understands and they're not threatened by it. So it's very easy to introduce into our culture, and it has been introduced. So, I think that it's definitely got a place. And if you're thinking of ESG applications, I think there's plenty of places that this can be used and institutionalized. And by the way, for those of you who are interested in astrology and wondering about the world these days, we just entered the age of Aquarius. I don't know if any of you are astrology fans or know anything, but we're the age of Aquarius is an air sign. So anything that has to do, that comes through the air, technology, music, any of these things, is going to be more readily embraced. So in terms of investing opportunities, and particularly ESG, technology, Bitcoin, medical technologies, there's a lot of things that I think are going to do very well. But anyway, music sort of fits right in with that. So I don't want to take any more time, but I did want to mention those couple things because I think they're important, and it's nice to meet all of you. So thanks for letting me just share for a few minutes.
Thank you, Deborah. And I see Chantaline, do you have your hand up?
Thank you, and I won't be as profound as the previous speaker. I just want to make for Julene and actually for Deborah, because I just want you to share with you something I've noticed, and I want you to see what you think about it and how you can incorporate it in your work. I come from Montreal. In Montreal, we have Montreal is a South by Southwest scene in Texas, right? And the reason we do is because there's so much music coming out of there. Where there's so much music coming out of there is because actually there's a multitude of different culture working together and creating together, and you get so much more, right? So my question to you is, why is it that in the music field, we see the value of diversity and bringing different culture and different thinking together and style and variety, but we don't in life, we don't see it. We still do not see the value of diversity. I mean, people say they do, but a lot of people do not. And how can we use music to prove that point and advance that social agenda of diversity in human being is extremely good as well.
Yeah, okay, I'm gonna that. It's not built into the system itself. Okay, so I'm just going to actually respond to a couple of these things. So for example, Indian classical music, the average song length is 30 minutes long because you're going into a state, right? Radio airplay won't play something over 5 minutes. You know, usually it's 3.5, 4.5 minutes. Okay, so there is a structure built in that actually doesn't incorporate diverse. This is part of the reason why I got into it. And in fact, these types of practices, there's different modes of performance. The type of mode of performance that you're talking about, a more community-based mode, isn't built into the system itself. Okay, that's why there's no data to account for it, there's no visibility on it, and there's no way to digest it within the current music industry that we have. So this is one of the main things that we're doing. I'll tell you, we analyze music, but we also analyze your music. We take the biomarkers and detailed information from your voice and personalize the sounds to you. And we have a song database that is not only acoustic descriptors, but performance mode and what that performance mode does to relate to social outcomes. This has not been built into the music industry system. There's no way that there's no process or data or anything they have to understand it. So this is part of the systemic change, that not only do we want in-depth, sound, personalized sound healing to be happening as much as possible. We want more social outcomes. We want those outcomes measurable. We want to be able to make those correlations. It's not built into the system is the short answer. And that's part of the big systemic change, both for health, but also for better social cohesion, social stability, social learning and understanding. It's not built in, it's the productization of music. You just sell music as a product. If you just sell music as a product, just to be sold and bought, there's no musical nutrition. You don't know what's inside that music. You don't know what potential it has to do. So part of the mission is exactly that. If we build this into the system and they can see, oh, actually that group of people coming together, they have ingredients and potentials for these types of social outcomes. And these are the types of sounds and things that'll be relevant to them. Then you can start to work in the way. So that's very much part of the systemic change that we're working on.
I had a couple of questions.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, and then I see another hand raised too, so.
Okay, Julene and I had a fantastic conversation about system change in the music industry, and based on that and building on earlier comments, I had two questions. There's maybe along with the diversity, there are some fantastic musicians out there who aren't getting the attention I think that they deserve, and maybe this goes to the diversity point. How would we change that system so that the best musicians are getting the attention they deserve, and people are getting a richer, kind of fuller experience? And the other one is, you talked about what happened when we labeled food. How would we label music, assess it and label it? I'm sure that music affects people differently. There's general things like the great 60s song that said, love one another. Come on, people now. Everybody get together, try and love one another right now. That's probably going to raise your mood, and others that advocate violence are going to lower your mood. So how do you change the industry to bring up the diversity, and also how do you wind up labeling music?
Frank, I would have liked it much better if you actually sang those lines. Could you do that again, please? Come on, Frank.
Come on, people now. Everybody get together, try to love one another right.
Nice. Outstanding. Well done, Frank.
Got a new job ahead of you, Frank.
Well done. Yeah. Well, I'll try to answer this. So we break it down into macro and micro ingredients. We do advanced sound analysis. So you can actually do an acoustic analysis of key acoustic indicators that enable you to map the psycho-emotional spectrum of a song. And there are broader sort of musical acoustical indicators that indicate level of musical nutrition acoustically, as well as the context and the meaning and the themes involved. And we're going into the big data side of what I'm doing that was beyond my talk. So essentially with the music that we have now is using 25 to 35% of the rhythmic spectrum, for example. There are literally worlds of rhythm that we don't know, right? So by creating those, make that data available, we can get people to make richer sounds. By the very act of doing personalized mood-based music, instead of just, what's the next biggest thing? As soon as you focus on personalized mood-based music, you've created a demand for a certain type of quality content, for a more thoughtful process of quality content. In terms of getting the best, better music out there, it's the same thing. If you do a musical nutrition analysis, we're in the process of making musical nutrition labels, so it's good that you're bringing this up. Macro ingredients, rhythm, because what is going to be beneficial to you is different to someone else. So it's all about being personalized. Timbre, we've got a whole list of ingredients, so I'm happy to send that with you. But essentially, getting more quality music or more nutritious music out there, you have to have a nutritional system, right? So essentially, if we're now looking at benefit-based music distribution, we can't have music with low level of emotional theme content, limited sonic spectrum, behaviors which correlate to more violent social outcomes. As soon as you put in a nutritional framework, then a completely different set of artists come into the priority, right? So it's that sort of real integrated approach to systems change that we're prototyping. I've got my big technical workshop at the end of this month, so I'll be able to tell you at the end of the month what we're going to release first after we finish the software architecture. So it's early days, but everything you're talking about is absolutely on the agenda. Absolutely.
Excellent. Listen, Julene, thank you. And Ketan, before we go to you, Miss Lee had a question, and I apologize. I did not know how to say your first name. You can say that for me so I don't have to say Miss Lee from now on, but please speak up. Thank you.
Hi, everyone, and thank you. My name is Jian, so Jieun. And
thank you.
So today I could participate in this meeting through Mr. Jed Emerson, and then I'm thanking for him. And today I just want to share a little experience I had 2 years ago for the question of Shanghai, which was my job was journalist before and documentary maker. And 2 years ago, I could organize a team of 30 people from Europe, including some French people, German, and Belgium. And then we traveled from India, Nepal, into Tibet. And there, actually, nobody really are musicians, but we brought our instruments like grand piano, violin, tambourine, and even just a cup. And then we just sing. And we started to travel from Delhi to different places like Varanasi and Nepal, and then we went to Lhasa. And our way of traveling was music. So we visited different places like refugee camp, Tibetan school, Tibetan monastery, and in the street in Himalaya. So we just share the music, and by the means of peace, solidarity, and love. And actually at that time, nobody really speak Indian, like Hindi or Tibetan or other languages, but we just shared music in different places. And everyone in that place, like little kids or 80 years old grandfather or everyone just joined us and then played the piano together. And some of them, they never heard of what is piano before. And we just played and sing together, and then we united by the language of music. And when we went to Tibet with these people, actually there is policemen disrupted us to play music there. because they just afraid of being united with all the people and gather together to do something they are afraid of. But just instantly, we just play the guitar and piano, and people just like, even the policeman accepted it as it is, and then they play together with us. We don't speak, we just play, and we just sing and dance, and people started to be united. And then I realized that, wow, the music is beautiful tool to unite people and spread the solidarity and love and peace. And that was just an extremely like wonderful experience I had. So I just wanted to like share this story with you guys. And thank you so much for sharing your valuable insight with us today. Thank you.
That's beautiful. And Ketan, I know we look at the hour and it's like, oh my gosh, we're already here. Ketan, I'm going to hand it off to you. But before I do that, just a quick segue is that, you know, thank you so much for that story. And we like to think the culture of Future Capital, the music that we play, is the tune that the industry is typically afraid to talk about. You know, love and consciousness and togetherness. And that's the vibration. So we have a lot of incredibly highly acclaimed individuals around the world who are part of us. And it's hard sometimes. It's like, well, I don't really know what it is, but it's just such a great group. And so we like to think about that in the music playing in the background. So Ketan, off to you before we do a quick close.
I mean, it's difficult to follow that because that was so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you, Julene. It's good to hear that.
Thank you.
What an experience. And I've been to Tibet, and I think actually, and linking into what Marina said earlier, if you just sit in silence in Tibet, you hear a sound, which sounds like eternity, I think, whatever that sounds like. I haven't measured it, but I get that. And then for both Julene and Patrik, because Patrik was very profoundly impactful when we met. And I really loved it, Patrik, how you shared so much of yourself, and we all felt like doing it too. I think the music correlates, or the sounds or the sensors correlate very much to the state of our being and express itself in waves that we can measure. And so for nearly 9 years, I've had somebody come regularly and plug in something and measure the brainwaves so I can see what happens in different states. And what you find is when you change what the senses are receiving, whether it's music or lights, green, different kinds of sounds, different activities, the brainwave pattern changes. And there are patterns that are more peaceful, more profound. There are patterns that are deeper. There are patterns that perform greater than other patterns, depending on what you're trying to do. And part of our mastery is to understand that correlation between what comes in and how we translate it and how we get to master the mastery of that state of being. And this feedback loop of measuring the waves and seeing the impact, I think is one of the important keys.
Thank you, Ketan. That's beautiful. And this is the other wonderful part about this group. Patrik, I wish we could hear more of you. We're already 2 minutes over. But what I would like to say is that, no problem is solved by the same consciousness that created it. We've all heard that quote from Master Einstein. And so that's why we come at this from a different consciousness and a systems-based point of view with different stakeholder perspectives from around the globe to solve this problem that our species so needs to solve in this year and coming years. So thank you all for all the work you're doing. What we like to do is we like to end in silence. And so we have this wonderful little ritual. I forgot, by the way, to do silence at the beginning because we usually do that. So, but at the end, we also end in silence. And so what we do is we just have this wonderful moment together, and you can go off whenever you feel like going off. Just end and leave. And stay as long as you want. And we just hold this wonderful space of visioning now for 2021 and beyond, for a beautiful world that rises to a higher level of consciousness and capital, where all of us can live our reason for being and make the world a better place. So thank you all for coming, and we'll get information out about next month as well.